Hey guys, welcome back. Tisha here, back for another chapter reading of Helga Zeiner, section 132, A Child Bride Forced into Polygamy. Do me a favor and hit the like button as it supposedly helps the channel. And let's go ahead and get into chapter 16. All day Martha waited for news, her mood altering from panic attacks to calm defiance. One moment, she beat herself up over caring for Anna without permission. The next, she congratulated herself for having done what was needed, for showing compassion, for acting like a human being. But it wouldn't be interpreted like that by her husband because he was not human. He was a monster with the power to destroy her. Oh, dear Lord, she would suffer horribly, but had the Lord anything to do with it? Would he interfere and help her and stand by her in this dreadful situation? All day long, she agonized, reassured herself, went into despair, and back again. If you guys don't remember, this is all because she did more than what she was supposed to do when it came to taking care of the prisoner. I'm calling her a prisoner because that's the way they treated her. The fact that that lady's hair was matted and she had lice in it and all those things, and Anna showed her compassion. So she doesn't know what's going to happen for doing so. Finally, by evening, word came down to the women's quarters that their husband wanted the whole family assembled in the community room. Martha wasn't sure of what was expected of her, so she followed the others to the main house, driven mainly by her desire to finish the nerve-wracking wait, but also out of unexplainable, self-destructive curiosity. Tell me my fate and let's get it over with. Marion seemed to understand why she had shown up because she acknowledged her arrival with a simple nod of her head, which at the same time indicated to Martha to get in there and kneel down like all the others. The community room was packed with all the sister wives except Anna, of course, and all the children. Some were very young, like Emma's two toddlers, but most could already kneel by themselves next to their mothers. All the older boys, those who were approaching priesthood soon, stayed at the back, leaning against the wall, overseeing the family. Because as we all know, the men are treated differently in this thing, and they get to do things that the women wouldn't ever dare dream of doing. Martha stole a glance at them. The tallest of them was the bishop's eldest son. He held a straw hat in his hand, fidgeting with it, turning it around nonstop. Martha noticed again how good-looking he was, and then she quickly added for a boy, although his face was quite manly. Okay, so Martha noticed again how good looking he was, and then she quickly added for a boy, although his face was quite manly looking. Okay, so he was good looking to be such a young man. She wondered again why he had so little of his father, slim and tall with gentle features that were well defined, not at all like... She quickly turned her head to her husband, who had just entered the hall. He briefly whispered something to Marion, who was kneeling in the first row, before he positioned himself in front of his family. Glory to the Lord. All heads turned to him, and all eyes looked up to him. Only the older boys remained standing, listening to their father pronouncing the law. Martha wanted to be brave and told herself there was no point in being scared, yet she did not dare look at the big round man with the red face. She stared at the floor in front of her, trying not to remember what he had done to her. She made herself as small as possible, hoping to disappear behind the shoulders of the kneeling sister wives in front of her. If only she could evaporate into thin air and float out of the open window. I am the Lord thy God. As always, he started reciting a part of the scripture from section 132, well known to all of them, and will answer thee as touching this matter. Therefore, prepare thy heart to receive and obey the instructions which I am about to give you. Let's throw a little bit of scripture in it so it sounds like this is really coming from God. Got it. Now he would tell them about Anna's death and condemn her soul to everlasting damnation. So this girl has suffered all these months in isolation, carrying a baby, You only kept her alive for the sake of the baby. Then you decide to get rid of her and then damn her like she hasn't already gone through enough. Good thing that that's not true. Good thing that this man has no power in that. But just the thought of it is insane to me. One of our own has sinned, and by the power of the holy priesthood bestowed upon me, I have to restore things to their right order. But the Lord has blessed me. He has sent me a sign, and I must abide by the law which was appointed for this blessing. Therefore, the sinner will be spared. Oh, is he going to let her live? Okay. A murmur went through the family, followed by an expectant silence. Martha looked up again. Could it be? Did she hear right? When a healthy child is born, I rejoice because I have done my duty to the Lord. I have brought a waiting soul into this world to add to the Lord's army of soldiers. Today my joy has been doubled, and my reward will be even greater. Not one, but 2 baby boys have been born today. The Lord has blessed me, and the sign is clear. He has twice replaced the little soul we lost 6 months ago, and thereby has cleared the mark of sin from Anna. I mean, here's the thing. I'm glad that she's going to be spared, but because she had twins, now you're going to spare her. So if she only had one, that wouldn't have happened. I'm just saying here, like that's how it's reading. She will be forgiven and will enter our family again. Praise the Lord. Another louder murmur rose. This was unheard of. Martha wanted to yell out, "Yes, thank you, Lord," but did not dare. Tears filled her eyes. Their husband then went into one of his long drawn-out eulogies, explaining the ways of the Lord, the meaning of the scripture concerning his decision, and the unwavering faith he demanded from them in order to be allowed to enter eternity in his entourage. This whole time they're on their knees. The young men are standing, but the women and children are on their knees the entire time while he's doing this. Interesting, right? It couldn't be me. After a while, Martha's knees hurt like hell. Exactly. The others also started to fidget and shift their weight a little ever so often. Martha had never questioned prayer sessions before. Her father had also enjoyed preaching for long hours, and she had always pretended to listen to him while allowing her mind to drift off because his teachings were always terribly boring. Today was different, though. She listened intently. Every word her husband said sounded contrived. He preached how they must live according to the holy doctrine and covenants, knowing full well that those had been written by another man, not by God. Why did he make them believe that they came directly from the Lord? Did he really believe this himself? Martha stole a glance around the room. All the sister wives had their heads turned toward their husband. Did they all accept his words as if they were the Lord's himself? Or did they at least, some of them, harbor doubts? It was impossible to tell what they were thinking. Suddenly, she realized that the bishop had not mentioned her at all. In her silent dispute of the validity of his sermon, she had practically forgotten the reason for her fear. Was she now judged more leniently? Was she also forgiven simply because Anna had twins? Because she had comforted Anna and had thereby assisted to bring 2 healthy children into this world. Would that now count in her favor? Finally, he seemed to have exhausted his need to preach. After he wrapped up the session with a final encouragement to go and keep sweet, some women had to bend forward and put their weight on their hands to be able to get up at all. Martha's legs were stiff from the long kneeling too, but she straightened up quickly and hurried towards the door. I would probably get in trouble because I would be that woman to be like, join me. Join us and kneel with us. Because why are we kneeling to, they weren't kneeling to God. They were kneeling to him. They weren't kneeling to the Lord. They were kneeling to him. For him. That's weird. It's weird to me. Martha, Miriam's low voice behind her made her freeze. She would not escape after all. Some of the young children, excited that the long session was over, pushed by her, elbowing their way out, while she stood where the voice had caught her. When all had left the hall, only she and Marian remained. Martha, I know what you have done. Our husband is pleased with the blessing of the Lord. You have fulfilled your duty in this miracle, and I have told him of your obedience. Do you understand me? Oh, goodness. I hope she don't have to go back to that man. Oh, goodness. Martha bit her lip. Did she understand? Her mind raced through the options Marian's cryptic questioning could imply. It had been Marian who had entrusted her to look after Anna. She must have noticed that the caretaking had been excessive, to say the least. Did she now feel guilty for choosing someone who had so clearly overstepped the line? Was she guilty by association? She had not told her husband the whole truth. Had Marian gone as far as lying to her husband to cover up herself? Marian wanted her to keep quiet. That was the only possible conclusion. Yes, Marian, I have done my duty. Indeed, you have excelled in it and shall be rewarded. Thank you. Anna needs a place of her own again to recover fully and to take care of the twins. We will bring her back to her old hut, but there is not enough space for all of you. Our husband has agreed that you may move up to the main house. Is that a good thing or a bad thing because he's in the main house? Is she moving to the main house and getting her own space away from him? Or is she going to be expected to lay with him? Also, if she's in the main house, that means that her conversations and discussions with Emma are to be no more. So now she's kind of losing a friend. Oh my God. Martha could not hide her instant terror over this horrible prospect. But Marian must have misunderstood her thinking. She expressed excitement. Do not expect your husband to see you. Although you are still without child, he could not forget the disgusting incident last time he was with you. There is little hope that he will ever forgive you enough to want you near him again. Oh, that's good. All you should have did was throw up on him the first time. Okay, good. Martha felt the blood rush through her veins, pushed by shame and relief all in one. You have been taught to count well. This sudden change of topic surprised Martha. Of course she could count. What did that have to do with her and her husband? It came easy. Do you read and write as well? Martha had always been quick to learn, and her mother's had chided her often for being too bright for her own good. She nodded. Good. I need help with my office work and with schooling the children. From now on, you will stay close to me and I will instruct you in your new duties. Just stay away from our husband. You wouldn't have to tell me twice. Stay away from him? No problem. I don't want to be near that red-faced man who is deplorable and does deplorable things to children and women. You don't got to tell me shit. Anyways, let's go to the next chapter. Chapter 17. All day Friday, an infuriating sense of vulnerability took hold of Richard. Ever slowly passing hour increased his level of suspicion and dread. What if Daisy could not persuade his neighbor to sell him the needed land? What if he wanted more than he could afford? What if it took too long to settle? What if the moon would turn square and the sun would spit black dust on him? By late afternoon, he was in such a state, he checked the clock every 10 minutes and could not concentrate on anything. Why didn't she call? It was a 3-hour drive from Camp Loops, maybe a bit longer, which meant she would definitely have been at the neighbor's farm before 2. Discussions, documentation, whatever, up to 3, maybe even 4, then back south until she got a cell reception again, about 1 hour, so she should have been able to call him well before 5. Not after. It was now 5:45. What on earth was she doing? Was it good? Was it a bad sign if the negotiations took so long? He decided to go to the lobby of the Vancouver hotel, have a drink, read the latest Newsweek, and distract himself by watching the pretty girls flaunt themselves in their flimsy summer outfits. Just as he walked out the office door, the phone rang. "About bloody time," he complained while rushing back to his office. He needed the security of his desk, jotting down notes while listening, never being one to multitask, talking, thinking, and walking at the same time. Oh, so he had to sit down because he can't write what's going on. He can't write and think and all that other stuff. I get it. There are some people like that. My best friend is like that, to the point where I can always tell when we're on the phone if she's like scrolling on something or she's reading, because she's so easily distracted. I love her, but she's so easily distracted. Okay. Daisy's voice was clear and sharp and an ice crystal on a winter's window. "Richard, something very strange has happened." He did not give in so easily. "What took you so long?" "It was nearly 11 before I got out of the office, and then I stopped at the resort in Blue River for a bite to eat before I drove on. I do have to eat, you know." "Sorry, go on." "From there, it's another hour drive." I know, never mind. Did you meet with this Jake guy?" She sounded surprised, puzzled, slightly shocked. "I called him this morning and left a message on his answering machine that I would drop by his place this afternoon, thinking I'll have no problem finding it. According to the surveyor's map, there's only one road, and the turn off after our easement had to be the driveway to his house." "Right. You are not going to believe what happened next. I drove along the road. By the way, it's pretty scenery there. Lots of poplars and willow bushes along the roadside, until I came to a white wooden gate. It was open, but a truck blocked my way. I opened my window, stuck out my head, and wanted to ask the driver to let me pass when two guys popped up behind the driver's compartment. They had guns. Oh boy. Oh boy. You're sitting here rushing this lady, and she is going through all types of stuff by herself trying to check this land out. Let's see what happens. "They pointed them at me. They threatened me. I thought this must be a huge mistake, a misunderstanding, and yelled something friendly at them. I can't remember what I said. Something like, 'Sorry, but I'm here to meet Mr. Law,' or so, but they didn't budge, gesturing with the barrels of their shotguns for me to move, to back out. One of them, a really young guy, yelled a warning and started counting down. 5, 4, 3. So I reversed and got the hell out of there like a flash. Seriously, Richard, I was still shaking when I was halfway back to Blue River." He was stunned himself and murmured something like, "That's unbelievable." "You better believe it. Those bastards looked like they meant business. So I drove straight to the police station in Blue River to report it." But now the next incredible thing happened. The RCMP officer on duty said I should not worry about it. It is a known fact that nobody is allowed on this property without prior consent of the owner. They've had complaints before, but nothing serious has ever happened, and bar somebody getting shot at all. And not only that, the shot would have to at least maim, if not kill somebody. There is nothing they could do about it. Because Richard was lost for words, he did a quick time calculation as if this would be important. Daisy could not be back in Camp Loops yet. "Where are you now?" "I'm still in Blue River. Did you think I would give up so easily? I've checked myself into the resort." Luckily, it was August. If this had been winter season, she would have not been able to get a room. The Blue River Resort was world famous for providing the heli-skiing trips into the nearby Rockies. The fact that it was only 1 hour's drive to his development was supposed to make his project even more attractive to potential buyers. Sure, there was no point in her driving all the way back to Camp Loops and then up again if she planned to see the guy tomorrow. So now what? Have you called him and told him to whistle back his watchdogs? Well, guess what? I managed to get a hold of him after my little chat with the RCMP and introduced myself as one of his new neighbors who wanted to make a social call on him. He seemed very surprised to hear that I was so rudely turned away, the creepy bastard, as if he wouldn't have known, and said there's no need for me to visit him. He does not usually entertain female visitors. I stayed polite and proceeded to tell him that I am your partner. Excellent. And then he said he would see you tomorrow at 10. Involuntarily, Richard's hand picked up a pen and started to draw spirals on the empty sheet of paper in front of him. Tight, narrow spirals. So here's the thing. He doesn't want to have a discussion with the woman. He wants to talk to the man. Why are we not surprised here? I'm wondering who this guy is. Let's keep going. Don't be ridiculous. Wait, what's the bishop's real name? Is it the bishop? I can't remember, y'all. Put it down below. There is no need for me to drive all the way up there. You are not driving. I booked you on the first flight to Camp Loops tomorrow morning. A helicopter from the resort here will pick you up. Once you have landed there, no need to hire a car and drive all the way up, as I have mine here and we can drive back together. His spiral had reached the point of no return, and he started a new one. Please, Daisy, you know how much work I have here. Can't you handle this? The girl just got held up by guns and wasn't allowed onto the property. She stayed back. She talks to this man. She gets you an appointment and you're asking her to handle it. She already tried to handle it and he didn't want to talk to her. So no, get your butt up there and help that lady, or down there, wherever it is that you're flying to, and help that lady. The guys had guns. I know, but nothing ever happened. The police officer said so himself. Jake S. Law only wants to talk to you. You can handle him. You can be very convincing. You can be a very convincing woman if you want to be. Daisy seemed to smile because her voice shifted from cool and professional to slightly amused and professional. That may be so, but I have done a little research since I arrived at the resort, and the waiter who brought me my, I'm sorry to say, outrageously expensive room service snack filled me up in the local gossip. I know why Jake refuses to see me. Trust me, if you want to get the land to buy your road and save your ass, you better come up here. What reason could anybody have not to deal with gorgeous, intelligent, reasonable Daisy? He was wondering, and Daisy must have read his mind. The locals all know Jake never does business deals with women. Is he gay? What? Why is that the first thought? Okay. Quite the opposite. He is the leader. Oh, he is the bishop. He is the leader of a polygamous sect, and apparently he entertains a whole harem of demure women on the property who think of him as holy law. The locals know him as the bishop. Get out of here. Seriously. Our neighbors are a bunch of religious freaks who believe in male supremacy and some kind of endgame when the earth will be destroyed and only their followers will inherit heaven in all of its glory. It's a bit like Bountiful. Like what? Bountiful. You know, down south on the border to America. Don't tell me you never heard of what's going on there. His mind was racing. Religious zealots in the wilderness? It could be worse. Maybe it was a stroke of luck. How much would someone like that know about the value of his land? And surely they would be short of cash. Fanatics living on the fringe of society always needed money. Daisy realized that his attention had drifted and that he was not listening to her anymore. I will fill you in on the sword story once you get here. Sure, he didn't need to know anymore. He was already planning his strategy to outsmart the Jesus freak. This would be fun. You over there thinking that you about to outsmart the so-called Jesus freak, when what I really think is that he is going to outsmart you. How many pages is the next chapter? Let me see. Okay, y'all, I don't know what y'all want me to do because this next chapter is a little lengthy, but I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to do it. Chapter 18, because it's only 20-something minutes. I feel like I'm cheating y'all. When the alarm went off, he must have been in deep REM phase. Probably an early one, as he had not gone to bed until well after midnight. His whole body ached from lack of sleep and begged for a few more minutes of rest. Then his memory kicked in again and reminded him that he had to catch the early bird to Camp Loops. It was already 5 o'clock, and the paranoid security measures airports enforce nowadays added at least half an hour even to city hopper flights. Driving into the early August dawn, he reached Vancouver Airport and got through the checks just in time to grab a coffee and a donut from the Tim Hortons shop that mercifully was just opening up. On that 1 hour flight, he fell asleep again as soon as he had finished his breakfast substitute. 5 hours sleep just wasn't enough for him. The steward had to wake him after landing. He stumbled off the plane and onto the waiting helicopter from the Blue River Resort. 40 minutes later, they landed on their helipad, and he was taken to the resort's impressive lobby. A massive post and beam construction of huge Douglas fir logs supported the high vaulted ceiling, emphasizing the richness of the resort's reputation. Unquestionable wealth and old world charm. That's what the patrons expected when they frequented this luxury hideaway. Daisy was sitting in a deep, comfortable easy chair, reading glasses low on her straight, prominent nose, studying a newspaper. Her inbuilt radar must have been switched on as she looked up as soon as he entered. She was in uncharacteristic disarray, with unruly strands standing out from her crop of short brown hair. I don't know why I pictured her to be a blonde. Those tiny rebellious feathers surprised him even more than the slightly smudged eyeliner around her hazel eyes. Daisy was not a classic beauty. For this, he considered her a touch too tall. She was also thin, especially where it counted when you were a woman, and too aloof to let inner beauty shine through. But whatever her faults might be, she usually was a picture of perfection. He sat down on the sofa opposite her and moaned, "I'm tired and I'm hungry, but I'm not complaining because we will nail this deal and it will cost this Jake S. Law dearly to deprive me of my sleep." "Good morning to you too," she said, and was not smiling at all. Yeah, good morning. You look terrible. What's the matter with you? You had a good night's sleep and you've probably had a delicious breakfast already." Daisy stood up briskly and informed him that she had not eaten yet and that there was still time for a quick meal before they had to be on their way. They went to the resort dining room and loaded up on opulent buffets. Daisy came back with some fruit and a small Danish on her plate. "Not hungry?" he inquired, while he was enjoying his meal. She filled him in on some details. No, she was not hungry at all. She had been up half the night doing her homework, as a number of reports had to be filed today, and then she had done some research on this Jake guy. She was pissed no end about what she had found out and told Richard she could not wait to accompany him to the meeting. Richard had until now assumed that he would go to the meeting by himself and asked her if the guy would not object to her coming along. After all, on the phone, he had refused to deal with a woman. Daisy instantly got angry, like he had never seen her before. She actually raised her voice. "I don't give a shit what he wants. He didn't say you have to come alone, and I will bloody well not stay behind. You need a witness, and he'll just have to accept that it's me." "Calm down," Richard tried to appease her, without much luck. The deep furrows on her forehead did not smooth out, and her chin stuck out resolutely. "I'm calm." "No, you're not, but never mind. Come along and hold my hand if you must. I just don't understand what's eating you." "You will in a minute, when I fill you in on what I've discovered last night. Let's move on. It's already 8:30. Richard drove, of course. The breakfast had been all he needed to energize himself again, and suddenly he could not wait to get the negotiations with his neighbors started and finished. They drove in silence a short distance north along Highway 5 until they reached the turnoff to the tiny village of Deep Cove, which would eventually bring them to his and Jake's neighboring properties. After they had left the busy highway with its paved surface, he had to reduce his speed drastically to navigate the worst maintained gravel road in the whole province of British Columbia. You know what I was just thinking while I'm reading? Is it really Jake's property, or is it the group of men's property because they gave it to him? I'm just wondering. Y'all tell me what you think. Let's keep going. As soon as they had turned a few more corners, they both felt transported into another world. He knew from previous visits to his land that they most likely would not meet a single vehicle on their hour-long drive. He asked Daisy, what she thought of the land now that she had seen at least some of the surrounding area yesterday. "Nice," she said, non-committal. He smiled and let the landscape speak for him. Countless specks of red Indian paintbrush brightened the meadows on both sides of the road. Uncontrolled vegetation crept over the curves of the dusty road, wanting to take possession of it. In some places, high willow bushes bent their heavy branches so far into the middle of the road that they scratched the roof of Daisy's car. She pretended not to notice. To interrupt her brooding mood, he asked her to repeat exactly what she had told Jake on the phone. She confirmed it was next to nothing, which would make this game of persuasion a lot easier than if the guy had already knew the full scope of the subdivision plan. Daisy snickered that the creep had not even given her a chance to explain what this was all about. Is that what's eating you, he asked. No, of course not. Then what is it? With an impassionate voice, she tried to explain to him what had upset her so much. After the phone call, she had spent hours on the internet and had discovered disturbing facts about their neighbor. J.S. Law was not just a harmless recluse protecting his property against intruders by pointing a gun at him, as the police officer had suggested. No, this 45-year-old man had been born into a powerful American fundamentalist Mormon family who steadfastly refused to give up their right, given by God through his mouthpiece, Joseph Smith, to polygamy. In 1890, Wilford Woodruff, the president of the Mormon Church, had been forced by the American government to issue a manifesto suspending the earthly practices of plural marriage. In short, the principle. And the majority of the church members had followed his directive, but it had also effectively started a thriving underground cult of polygamous communities. A number of families refused outright to bend to the ungodly request for monogamy and moved over the borders. Some went north into Canada, some south into Mexico. Over several generations, those communities grew in size by exchanging young girls from families who followed the doctrine to live the principle in secret. A flourishing bride trade developed between the countries to keep the inbreeding to a minimum. From an early age, Jake had been groomed to become a leader of one of those secret sects. But something must have happened, and he had fallen from grace. About 10 years ago, he was exiled into the wilderness of Canada to form a new compound, multiple wives and all. At that point, Richard corrected Daisy. All that was very well, but it was past history, and he couldn't imagine their neighbor had anything to do with it, no matter what she may have Googled. She impatiently asked him to shut up and listen. The Canadian part of the church, she carried on to explain, had owned a 500-acre large property in the north, said parcel next to his development property, which apparently nobody had wanted to farm. 10 years ago, ownership changed over to Jake and his wife. Okay, got it. Most likely against a loan repayable to the church, because that's how it was done for all their compounds. Now, that's one thing that we did realize in reading some of these books, as well as in watching, like, what's the most show that My Five Wives. The church owned the land and they built the properties. So there's a lot of times where it muddies things, because who gets what? Where was I? 10 years, Jake must have been. Okay. I don't remember where I was at. Nobody wanted to farm. Hold on a second. I don't remember where I was at. All right, I'm back. Jake must have been pretty angry about the double punishment, being sent into the wilderness and having to pay for it. Why? Richard dared to interrupt Daisy again. This is a scenic part of the country, one of the most beautiful areas of the whole province, and no hardship to be exiled. Granted, the farms further south produce a better yield, and one would have to work pretty hard in this part of the country to make a living off the land, but it's not like being sent into Siberia. And to spend your time with a few pretty girls tending to your every whim can't be so tough either. She shot him a glance that would have scared a lesser man to death. Look at it from his perspective. By then, he was already over 30 years old. He was demoted from being the groomed prince of his father's kingdom to an exiled pauper in the country, far away from the movers and shakers. That must have deeply depressed him. And you better keep comments like your pretty girl remarks to yourself. Your male ignorance naturally assumes Jake must have been a delight to have a happy little harem joyously catering to his sexual fantasies. But please remember, his wives are his property anyway, no matter where he is. Do you really think that mattered to him? That this is what he wants? Well, he grinned, I wouldn't mind, and neither would every other normal man who is honest enough to admit it. That's part of the problem, because they think that this is a joke when these women are being tortured. Don't you get it? Those women are like slaves. Oh, please, don't give me that. This is Canada. They can leave if they don't like it. Daisy rolled her eyes and sighed heavily in a deliberate attempt to ridicule him. Sure, that's what everybody likes to believe. We live in an educated Western society. Slavery and suppression of women do not happen here. They happen in third world countries far away, hidden behind barracudas and sanctioned by Sierra laws. It could never happen here. Quite right. Talking about laws, our law happens to respect women's rights and gives them the means to fend for themselves. Don't give me that crap about slavery in the 21st century in British Columbia. What a load of nonsense. Okay, Richard, you sound dumb, because it's very much so is a thing. And it's not just women. It happens in different races too. His defense of the Canadian judicial system came out more forcefully than he had planned, so he took it down a notch. Look, Daisy, I can accept that you resent being on our way to a Mormon splinter group you suspect of practicing polygamy, and this is quite a mind bender for me too. But don't make me believe that their members, male or female, do not participate in this game willingly. Good on them. I wouldn't even call it perverted. It's just some form of sexual deviation from the norm. Maybe the women like it that way. Oh my goodness, he's so stupid. Sure, she hissed. They just love being graped, and please stop it. I am not trying to offend your feminist feelings, but I can't for the life of me figure out why you get so worked up about it. It's a religious sect, for heaven's sake. You said so yourself. That's all there is to it. Who cares? Who is to argue with religion? I sure won't, and that's not why we're driving up here. We want to get Jake to be a good boy and sign a sales agreement and be done with it. Remember? At least that's all I want to get out of this trip. Silence. Right. He glanced sideways and saw her nodding, sulking and nodding. Fine. We've got our priorities right then. Once he has signed our sales agreement, you can slap him in the face if you like. She tried not to smile. Honestly, real hard. Slap this son of a bitch around in the name of all that is holy to you. Or better still, now he was grinning with delight over a new version tickling his imagination, but he was holding back until she got curious. What? Better still, we kidnap our special friend, Jane d'Arc, and marry her off to him. Finally, Daisy saw the comical side of it and relaxed. As crazy as this fantasy sounds, I must admire your criminally insane disposition. The picture it conjures has merits, even if its social and humanitarian implications are totally unacceptable. Thank God Daisy was back to normal. Her sense of humor was a bit of the normal mark. She hardly ever reacted spontaneously, ignoring most of his many twisted and sometimes crude jokes. To acknowledge with a stilted comment that indeed she considered his matrimonial punishment for one of the killer bees funny was quite an achievement for her and for him, his dear unapproachable ice princess Daisy. There was a pickup truck waiting for them at the gate, but this time nobody was pointing a gun. The driver got out, walked over the driver's side of the car, and asked Richard politely to follow him. He was no more than 18 and dressed as if he had jumped straight out of one of those Norman Rockwell paintings, the ones depicting carefree, sweet country life. Distressed jeans overalls with paint smears and rips that would cost a small fortune in an LA boutique. A shirt with rolled up sleeves, a straw hat with a leather rim, band, and a natural smile on his face that would instantly light up any gray city day. The young man closed the gate behind them, got back into his pickup, turned and started moving up the driveway. They followed him for at least 5 minutes along a straight lane until they came to a cluster of small, fairly rundown houses, old dwellings constructed of rough wooden planks that had weathered over time, black in parts, showing open cracks between the horizontal beams. Richard counted at least 10 huts, each one the same size and shape. 2 small children, poorly dressed, were playing a finger game and were engaged in their own little world. They did not even hear 2 cars approaching. Suddenly, a woman ran out of the one house and shooed the kids inside. She wore heavy, clumsy-looking boots and nearly tripped over her long skirt. When she balanced herself again, she threw a startled look in their direction. Realizing that they had seen her and unsure if she should react to their presence, she decided against it and disappeared into the house again, as if she was scared of them. Other than her and the two kids, Richard and Daisy did not see anybody. The country yard they had to cross was devoid of all human life. Darkness and decay had settled on it long ago, but some chickens picked on the ground. A dog was sitting in front of a door, and a pig walked across the yard, carefully avoiding their cars. Excuse me. The pickup drove on, and Richard followed him until the mini village had disappeared from his rearview mirror. He stopped next to a much larger house, which obviously was Jake's place. Not that it was in any way prestigious, quite the opposite. It was a fairly simple 2-story log home with a metal roof and covered porch along the front. But compared to the huts they had passed, it was indeed a palace. It was quite obviously the official residence of the sect leader. They all got out of their vehicles. The young driver walked up to the house and knocked on the door, with Daisy and Richard standing behind him. A guy opened the door, filling out most of the space inside the frame. He was not grossly fat, but very fleshly, like a man who tends to obesity, but has not yet lost all of his muscle mass to the aging process. Big bulky arms and folds on his neck like a grown-up Sperry dog. Did I say that right? Shar-Pei, excuse me. Like a grown-up Shar-Pei dog. He shoved his large stomach like a prized possession in front of him. This unnaturally blown-up balloon stretched his shirt open between each button, drawing a chain of white underwear overalls along its middle from the neck down until it went underground to a secret place where his poor penis, which didn't see much daylight as Richard suspected, was hiding. They're supposed to be struggling and all of that, but this man has still managed to overfeed himself that he can't fit the clothes that were made. This is what's going in my head. Richard also noticed a curious mixture of pride in Jake's false welcoming smile. Quite understandable if one considered that he must feel ashamed to meet this sophisticated people like himself and Daisy under such depressing circumstances, yet at the same time feeling clerically and spiritually superior to them. Richard had him figured out in an instant. This man was a loser, if he ever saw one. He should be no problem at all. That's what you think. They introduced themselves. Jake shook hands with Richard and then with Daisy, making a polite remark about how lucky he was to be visited by such a pretty lady. Daisy swallowed hard and made a real effort to return the courtesy by nodding gracefully in his direction without looking him in the eyes. "Please come in," he invited, and they entered a room that was much brighter than Richard had expected. Yellow-stained logs and large south-facing windows dispersed the eerie uneasiness of the doom and gloom that had taken hold of him since they had passed through the clutter of huts. The interior of the house smelled of and looked like a basic comfort, pine-scented, cleaning oils, chocolate chip cookies, hand-embroidered cushions, ruffled curtains, and heavy-duty wood stove with neatly arranged logs in a basket next to it. Wood in summer? Well, maybe the evenings got cold here, Richard thought. After all, the altitude was at least 1,200 meters. Their host made a gracious gesture that looked uncoordinated and wrong. "Please have a seat. Guys with such enormous body mass should not attempt flowing arm movements," Richard thought, while he took his appointed place at one end of the longest wooden table he had ever seen. "Can I get you something to drink?" Daisy sat down next to him and declined. The same instant, Richard said, "Yes, thank you." "Is coffee all right? I have some freshly brewed." Richard said yes again. Jake walked out of the room into the adjacent kitchen, and Richard looked at Daisy, mouthing a silent, "Please try." She pulled a face, and they waited in unison like school children for the teacher to return. Jake came back, balancing a large tray. I'm surprised he's doing it, but maybe he doesn't want his wives to be seen, because this isn't something I think that he would normally do. I think this is something that he would normally have them serve him. He carefully placed it on the table and was starting to arrange the empty cups and saucers when Daisy stood up and, with her best imitation of demure, She politely asked him if he would mind if she took over. Not a flicker in her eyes betrayed her true conviction. She was all female servitude. He went for it, liked it, patted her hand. Yes, of course, she could. Her hand did not twitch. While she was pouring coffee and moving a sugar bowl, the milk jug, and a plate of cookies into his reach, Jake was chatting up Richard. Did they have a pleasant drive? How he liked this part of the country? If he came here often? Were they married? Did he think the weather would turn? A strange barrage of questions. That's basically small talk to make his guests more at ease. The drive had been good. Yes, he liked it a lot in this part of the province. He planned to move up here one day to retire. Until then, his office in Vancouver kept him busy. No, they were not married yet. Well, he hoped the weather would turn soon. It was one of those dry summers. Notice he said they weren't married yet. He's making it seem like it's something else. Anyways, non-committal talk good enough to throw Jake off track and eventually direct him his way. Or maybe he meant like neither one of them were married. Not necessarily married to each other. Country life holds such charm, he mused. That's why he had bought the property next door, and was even happier to finally meet his new neighbor. Jake smiled and asked Daisy to try one of the cookies his wife had baked them this morning, of the chocolate chip variety, as Richard had assumed from the smell that lingered in the house. Daisy took one nibble on it and muttered a compliment. Jake was beaming in her direction, and Richard started the conversation again to distract his attention away from her because he suddenly feared that Daisy would lose her her cool, and ask him which one of his wives was so good at baking. So Jake, he started, I'm sure you are wondering why we came here to see you today. Jake did not stop looking at Daisy. Actually, I am wondering what your relationship is with this lovely lady who mentioned on the phone she's your partner, if you two are not married. Sheesh. Richard already knew that Jake's twisted morals forbade him to discuss a business deal with a woman. Would he judge him on the same grounds now? Would he object if he clarified that Daisy was his assistant? Better be safe. Daisy is my fiancée, he said quickly, looking at her. She blinked ever so lightly while she bit a large chunk out of her cookie. Well, that's good to hear. Unmarried people should not travel together if they are not promised to each other. It happens all too often, don't you think? There is so much wrong conduct with the young ones nowadays. It is encouraging to hear that there are people out there aspiring to do what's right and healthy. Right. I don't get out of town as often as I used to. Too much work, but I must say I don't miss it. All that crime and noise and filth, drugs on every street corner, every billboard with half-naked women, and the ones on the street not much better. How could you let a young girl walk in a city without corrupting her for life? Our daughters are not even safe in bright daylight, and nobody does anything about it. The top politicians look the other way. What I am saying, not only the politicians, it's the teachers. What am I saying? Not only the politicians, it's the teachers, the priests, the true lot of them, failing their duties to protect society from those immoral seductions on display everywhere. I just come on now. You over the top with it. Is there stuff that's a little out there sometimes? Yes. Do I sometimes see women with their cheeks out and I'm like, good grief, could you cover some of that up in my head? Yeah. But you don't have to act on it because you see it. You don't have to be perversive just because you see it. And you're talking about what's going on there like there aren't perversions going on in your own home. Before he could ramble on, Richard agreed fiercely. Indeed, indeed. Daisy and I, we always say it's a shame how some people have their priorities wrong. As far as we are concerned, our future together is very important to us, and we are working to make it happen soon. Was this enough? Should he lay it on even heavier? An imp inside of him edged him on to explore the depth of Jake's antiquated conversations, to define the borders of his narrow-mindedness. We would be married already, but I don't feel certain that I can support my family yet. That is important. And until such time, we just practice patience. Jake smiled warmly. Patience. Yes. I always say paves the road to heaven. Jesus, this guy was not real. Richard returned his smile, a bit helpless, lost for words. Jake did not stare at Daisy any longer and turned his full attention to Richard. But as much as I enjoy our discussion of spiritual principles, I'm sure this is not what you came here for. Right. Suddenly, his round, jovial facial expression changed from a happy bear to a sly fox. So, my dear friend Richard, what is it that you want from me? In the next 20 minutes, Jake and Richard looked at the map of the neighboring land parcels, and Richard slowly and carefully explained to him that he wanted to purchase just a small strip of land so he could build a road leading to his property, no more than 3 or 4 acres, and preferably where the existing easement was. Daisy sat stoically next to them, pretending to be disinterested. Jake wondered aloud why the arrangement, which had served the purpose of access since long before his time, was suddenly not good enough for Richard, who in turn elaborated and waffled on about how he was just one of those guys who needed to have everything in order. After all, it would not matter to Jake one way or another, and he could make some unexpected money. How much would you pay me for it? Jake finally took the bait. Well, it's not really worth much. Richard opened negotiations. Jake belly laughed out loud. To you it is. Richard joined his laughter good-naturedly and felt he had a deal in his pocket. When people laugh together, a handshake is not far off. I thought of $500 per acre. Come on now. You got to know that that's not going to work. Come on. $500 per acre? Not 5,000, 500. Oh, okay. $500 per acre, he said, leaving the room to negotiate. More laughter. An attempt at humor with a fake Spanish accent. No way, Jose. Well, what's your idea? Jake shook his head, rubbed his stomach, burped quietly, did all the things one does pretending to consider. Richard was sure he had already figured in his head. He already had a figure in his head. Maybe closer to 1,000. You know what, Richard, my friend? I guess I never really thought about the value of my land. It's all a bit rushed, and I need time to think and talk it over with my wife. She's an owner, too. Then he stood up heavily, still smiling, and Richard's expression must have betrayed his total surprise at the turn of events, because Jake patted him on the shoulder and said, Don't worry. I'm sure we can come to an agreement. Why don't you and your pretty fiance go home now, and we'll talk again next time you come visiting. Richard had to swallow hard to keep himself from bursting into some of his favorite German swear word creations. This bastard. Come back next time. The creep had no idea how urgent this was for him, how incredibly important. Richard collected himself and stood up as well. Good idea. We would not want you to feel pressured in any way, I suggest. Looking over his shoulder in the direction of the window, something caught Jake's attention, and he interrupted his opponent in mid-sentence. Before you go, I want you to meet my wife. I can see her coming. Daisy and Richard turned their heads and saw a female figure approaching. Jake went to the door, opened it, and called out to his wife. Seconds later, she came into the room. Daisy was standing behind. I wonder if it's going to be Martha. Y'all, let's see. Let's see. Because he was up there talking like it was no big deal about this and whatever. I hope it's Martha. We'll see. Daisy was standing behind Richard, and her silent evaluation of the woman burned holes into his back. The woman wore a floor-length dress, her hair was tied back, and her face looked so haggard. It was impossible to guess her age. Okay, it's not her, Martha. She greeted them with a lifeless grimace that was nothing but the mechanical movement of her hollow cheeks, pulling the corners of her mouth upward, mimicking a smile. Marion had came to say hello. I should have known it was Marion. Marion, come say hello to our guests before they leave. She stepped towards them. I'm sorry I was not back earlier, she said, not explaining the reason for her absence. They all walked outside, Jake with his arm over Marion's shoulder. The guy has a thing about shoulders, Richard thought, which is not surprising considering his bulk. Patronizing gestures probably made him feel good. It was time for one last try. Actually, we are staying in the Brule River tonight, and I don't know when we'll be back next. How about we drop by again tomorrow? That would give you time to think things over. Maybe. Yes, maybe. They walked to the car together, and Richard's whole body was aching to scream obscenities at him. Maybe, you asshole, your vertiments. Maybe I kick your brains all the way down into your fat ass. If I can spare some time tomorrow, you can come up here again and we will talk some more. Give me a call tonight after dinner and then we'll see. Great. Thanks. Bye. Daisy must have known how shaken he was and automatically moved behind the steering wheel. They drove off, not saying a word, while Marion and Drake, standing side by side at the entrance of their house, waved after them until they disappeared from sight. They drove through the depressing assembly of deserted-looking huts again, down the driveway, through the open gate, until they finally reached the road. They could see how the guard, waiting for them to pass, closed the wooden gate behind them. It was a big relief to be back on the gravel road. In a sense, it was as if a pressing weight that had been lifted off of him. Daisy seemed to feel the same way. He could hear her breathing in and out as if her lungs were desperate for fresh air. He hit the dashboard with his open palm. Jesus Christ, what was all that about? What the hell happened just now? Surprisingly, she turned and snapped at him. Well, what do you think just happened? How should I know? I normally don't deal with idiots. Neither do I. But you underestimate him. He's no idiot. Oh, come on. He doesn't have a clue. Didn't you hear him going on about the value of abstinence and the fading moral values of the young? Of course, I heard a lot I did not like. And I saw a lot I did not like. Like what? Like him playing you, stringing you along as if you were a beginner? And that is how it ends. All right, y'all, we stopping there because I'm almost at an hour. A lot went on in this. I'm interested to see how this is going. Anyways, I'll see you on Wednesday for our next reading. Thank you guys so much. Like the video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time.